Now going to return to the big story of the afternoon. Breaking news that 2 objects have been found in the Indian Ocean that may be linked to the missing Malaysia Airlines flight 370. I will go to our reporter Laura Turner, who is in Kuala Lumpur. Laura, we know this news is filtering to where you are. Can you tell us about the reaction of both journalists and possibly family members over there?
Good afternoon. Well, we have not seen family members as yet. I think the information is just filtering through to them. I did hear a few minutes ago from someone who is close to the pilot who was on the plane, who was desperately trying to find out what is going on in Australia. What has Tony Abbott said? So we've passed that information on to him about that press conference. In terms of other families, we haven't seen any here yet. We know they've been holed up in a hotel in Kuala Lumpur minded by Malaysia Airlines. That was part of their gripe last night. But in terms of the journalists here, the world's media in the press room, just as this news broke, we're in a flurry of activity trying to find more information. What's going on in Australia? What's happened here? Of course, we know it was Tony Abbott that announced that they've got those 2 satellite images and that they've analysed those images, and it's credible and new information that could mean that this is debris, 2 areas of debris
Laura,
floating
I'm going to have to
in the
interrupt
southern
you there
Indian
because
Ocean.
we are seeing the Australian Maritime Safety Authority begin their press conference. We'll go live to Canberra now.
My colleague is Air Commodore John McGarry from Defence. I will make an opening statement before we open up to you for questions. All times that I use will be expressed in Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time or Canberra time. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority is coordinating the Southern Corridor search for the missing Malaysian Airlines aircraft with assistance from the Australian Defence Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force and the United States Navy. AMSA's Rescue Coordination Centre Australia has received satellite imagery of objects possibly related to the search for the missing aircraft flight MH370. RCC Australia received an expert assessment of that satellite imagery this morning, 20th of March. The images were captured by satellite. They may not be related to the aircraft. The assessment of these images was provided by the Australian Geospatial Intelligence Organisation, or AGO, because that's a mouthful, as a possible indication of debris south of the search area that has been the focus of the southern search operation since Monday, 17th of March. The image is in the vicinity of the search area defined and searched in the past 2 days. Further images are expected after commercial satellites were redirected to take high-resolution images of the areas of interest. These will be provided in due course. 4 aircraft have been reoriented to locate the objects approximately 2,500 kilometres southwest of Perth as a result of this information. A Royal Australian Air Force Orion aircraft arrived in the area about 1:50 p.m. this afternoon. A further 3 aircraft have been tasked by RCC Australia to the area later today, including a Royal New Zealand Air Force Orion and a United States Navy Poseidon aircraft. The Poseidon aircraft should be on scene now. The second Australian Orion departed Royal Australian Air Force Base Pearce at 2 p.m. this afternoon and should be on scene at 6 p.m. this afternoon. The New Zealand Orion is due to depart at 4 p.m. this afternoon and should be on scene at 8 p.m. A Royal Australian Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft has been tasked by RCC Australia to drop datum marker buoys. These marker buoys assist RCC Australia by providing information about water movement to assist in drift modelling. They will provide an ongoing reference point if the task of relocating the objects becomes protracted. A merchant ship that responded to a shipping broadcast issued by RCC Australia on Monday is expected to arrive in the area about 6 p.m, having been diverted by RCC Australia. The Royal Australian Navy warship HMAS Success is en route to the area, but is some days away. She is equipped to recover any objects located and proven to be from MH370. The focus for AMSA is to continue the search operation with all available ships and aircraft. The ships and aircraft are searching for any signs of the missing aircraft. Weather conditions are moderate in the southern Indian Ocean where the search is taking place. However, poor visibility has been reported, and this will hamper both air and satellite efforts. AMSA continues to hold grave concerns for the passengers and crew on board, and I must emphasise that these objects may be very difficult to locate and they may not be related to the search. Air Commodore McGarry and I will now be happy to take any questions.
Mr Young, what do the objects look like? What do they appear to be?
The objects are relatively indistinct on the imagery. I don't profess to be an expert in assessing the imagery, but those who are expert indicate they are credible sightings. The indication to me is of objects that are a reasonable size and probably awash with water bobbing up and down out of the surface.
Can you give us any idea of the size? Like the size of a basketball or a seat cushion, or much larger?
No, much larger than that. The largest image that I've seen is assessed as being 24 metres. There's another one that's smaller than that, and a number of other images in the general area of the biggest one.
You said that an aircraft arrived at about 1:50. That's almost 2 hours ago now. Have you had any report back?
The aircraft has reported on the weather on scene. That's where I get the information that there is poor visibility in the area, and perhaps Air Commodore McGarry could talk about the implications of that separately.
So is that aircraft on scene, has that relocated the piece of wreckage that was spotted on the satellite?
No, there have been no sightings yet.
What will the merchant ship do? Will that, if it does find the objects, or if it gets to the scene and the objects are there, will it pick them up?
The most likely scenario is that an aircraft will find an object if it is findable, and then report back an accurate GPS position, and AMSA would task the ship to proceed to the area and attempt to see it. That would be our first chance to get a close-up look at whatever the objects might be, and progressively advance the identification of whether they're associated with this search or not.
When was the satellite imagery actually captured? What day?
We were provided it from the Australian AGO this morning, but I might ask Air Commodore McGarry to speak about the imagery.
So the imagery is being progressively captured by satellites passing over various areas. The task of analysing imagery is quite difficult. It requires drawing down frames and going through frame by frame. The moment that this imagery was discovered to reveal a possible object that might indicate a debris field, we have passed the information from Defence across to AMSA for their action.
AGO are the nation's foremost experts on this kind of stuff. Is it fair to say that if they've had a look at it and believe that it is credibly debris from the plane, that we can sort of draw conclusions from that there's a fair chance that it is?
Look, quite simply, it is credible enough to divert the research to this area on the basis it provides a promising lead to what might be wreckage from the debris field. John, if you want to elaborate any further on that. But
the only elaboration I would make on that is we have been in this business of doing search and rescue and using satellite images before, and they do not always turn out to be related to the search, even if they look good. So we will hold our views on that until they're sighted close up.
What kind of satellite was it that spotted the debris in the first place, and whose satellite?
I'm unable to advise on that, I'm sorry. I simply do not know.
You mentioned further satellite imagery. When do you expect to receive that?
Well, AGA will continue to provide all possible support to this operation. The ability to retask assets, commercial and others, to enable us to focus in on an area to support this search will become a priority, but I'm unable to give you any advice on when additional imagery or whether that additional imagery might even hold any further clues.
Mr. Young, you said the other day that the water here was very deep. Do you have a more specific idea of just how deep the water is and what would be the nature of the sea floor?
I apologise. I remember taking that question, but I didn't check it any further. I understand it would be several thousand metres deep, and I'm speculating an abyssal plain floor, but I will check it and I will get the information back to you this time.
That'll be a rough floor.
I will check it and I'll get the information back to you this time. Sorry, to the back.
2,400 kilometres from here. How many flying hours is that to actually reach that?
So that area is now 4 hours, approximately 4 hours flying time for the P3, and it enables us to spend approximately 2 hours or a little bit more perhaps on station once we get into the search area.
So how long can they, how much fuel have they got to stay over that area?
Well, it's 2 hours of endurance once we're on station. So it's 2 hours of search time that we can devote. I can't give you how many pounds or gallons of fuel that might equate to.
Mr. Young, what would your advice be to the families who've been waiting for 12 days for news of this plane?
I would advise that AMSA is doing its level best to find anyone that may have survived, if indeed the aircraft came into the southern corridor, and if indeed these objects sighted by satellite are associated with the aircraft. That will put us into a more accurate search area than the one we have at the moment.
Mr. Young, the other day you said that you described this operation as trying to find the needle in a haystack. Is it surprising that you possibly detected these objects so soon in the search?
I don't want to draw too many conclusions from this. We have two separate forms of analysis here. You might recall on the slide here the two yellow arrows pointing to analysis done by the United States National Transportation Safety Board about the movements of the aircraft. That has focused searching, and we have now seen satellite imagery of two objects, or a number of objects there. I don't want to draw too much from that. This is a lead. It is probably the best lead we have right now, but we need to get there, find them, see them, assess them, to know whether it's really meaningful or not. And I caution again, they'll be difficult to find. They may not be associated with the aircraft, and we have plenty of experience of that in other searches.
Has this sparked a flood of further assistance offers to Australia now that this information is
Defence, we have had offers potentially from other countries for military assets. The distance to the search area lends itself to certain types of aircraft that have long range and marine search radar capabilities. It is a long way off the Australian mainland. And we are working through defence channels to facilitate the provision of that assistance if those other nations are able to support.
But you haven't taken on any assistance?
We continue to work with those nations to see how they can assist. So,
The Chinese offered formally?
we're aware of the Chinese taking an interest in searching in the southern area, but we continue to work with nations to facilitate their integration into the current search.
Just to be clear,
Sorry, can I add to that we provide regular briefings for the countries that are involved in this search, including in the Rescue Coordination Centre, where attachés come in on a daily basis, so that we can keep them informed about what's going on.
And just to be clear, all of your resources are now devoted to this specific area. You're not continuing to search any other area?
You're correct. This is close enough to the National Transportation Safety Board's assessed area to be a possible sighting, and we want to find them and we want to work out what they are from seeing them. That's our priority at the moment.
Generally, how, in terms of this area of ocean, which is fairly pristine, how often would one expect to find a large piece of debris like this floating? Is it a common occurrence, or is it something like with perhaps aircraft crews, would they see large pieces of debris like this floating as a consequence of storms and things, or is this quite unusually large?
Our experience is that there is debris out there. It can be containers from ships, for example, falling overboard, and other objects of that type. On this particular occasion, the size and the fact that there are a number located in the same area really makes it worth looking at. But I don't want to speculate about what they are until we get there and we see them.
Sorry, can you tell us a little more about how many pieces have been sent? Is it just 2? And the dimensions of the other pieces?
No, I can't tell any more about that at the moment.
And when you said, when you said 24 metres earlier in the press conference, do you mean lengthwise? Is it long? What sort of object?
The image on the satellite image has a sort of blob with an assessment of 24 metres against it, which is the assessment that's been made by the expert that assessed it.
Is there any oil in the ocean around it or anything like that?
You can't tell that from the satellite imagery. Sorry, did you have a question?
When do you think you can bring that thing, that object, back to either Piers or back to Canberra for assessment?
There are many steps to happen before we'd get to that point. We have to locate it, confirm that it belongs to the aircraft, recover it, and then bring it a long way back to Australia. So that would take some time. What we're looking for is a confirmation that it does belong to the aircraft or it does not, and we'll consider what follows from that.
At this early stage of the imagery you've seen, is there anything that suggests it is at least part of an aircraft? Are there windows that you can see on it? Are there markings? Are there any bits and pieces that suggest it's actually from an aircraft?
The imagery is not that precise.
And when can you provide a clear image, picture of that object?
We're working to provide imagery for you. I don't have it with me right at the moment, but we are working to provide imagery that can release for media purposes at the earliest opportunity.
When will the new further information be released today?
Sorry?
When will the new further information be released today?
Sorry.
Information will be released in media statements as usual. I suggest you talk with the AMSA's media people after the conference.
When do you realistically expect to have some more information, though, based on the assets that you have out there at the moment?
It's in the nature of search and rescue operations that I cannot answer that for you. We have 4 aircraft out there this afternoon. The weather is not playing the game with us. We may get a sighting, we may not. We may get it tomorrow, we may not. But we will continue to do this until we locate those objects or we're convinced that we cannot find them. Thank you very much, everyone.
Sorry, are you able to just give us an idea of when you might get images?
So there you go. We have been listening to John Young from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, of course, with that breaking news in relation to the missing Malaysia aircraft. He confirmed the 2 objects at least have been found. One, though, from that satellite imagery looks like nothing more than a blob at this stage, but a blob that is 24 metres in size. And certainly an Orion aircraft we know has already arrived in that search area. Another will arrive in a couple of hours, and there's 2 more aircraft also that have been diverted, as well as a Navy warship, another merchant ship. Certainly all resources are en route to this area, 2,500 kilometres southwest of Perth, where 2 objects that have been found are possibly related to the missing Malaysia Airlines flight, of course. We are waiting to see whether that in fact is the case. Certainly the families of the 239 on board anxiously waiting for news, but this is a promising lead, a real incredible lead according to the Prime Minister. We'll go to a break now and we'll be back with more on this breaking news shortly. We must also say that Andrew Nelson, our reporter, is on board the Orion search aircraft, so we will have more information from him and the entire 9 team in a special report at 6 o'clock tonight also. But to the break now. We have more details now on our breaking news for the search for MH370. Here's what we know. Australian Maritime Safety have confirmed they have satellite imagery that's highlighted multiple items in the southern Indian Ocean as they search for missing flight MH370. The biggest object they've discovered appears to be 24 metres in size. It's surrounded by small debris. The first of the RAAF aircraft would have arrived at the search zone around 1 1:50 this afternoon. It's now looking to try and find the objects, but the area is vast. Authorities say the debris may not be the plane. More RAAF aircraft will join the search tonight, along with HMAS Success. The Navy vessel is some days away from the area, however. The vessel is being sent to retrieve any objects that are found by the surveillance aircraft. Authorities say the weather has been good, but visibility is poor. Again, they've stressed this may not be MH370, but authorities have said this is probably the best lead we have right now. And joining us on the line now is Jason Middleton, who is Head of Aviation at the University of New South Wales. Jason, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. You were listening to the press conference just now. With the new information that you heard, does it give you a better idea of what might have happened to this plane?
Look, unfortunately, as the search people said, there's not a big chance that it is a part of the aeroplane. Of course, they're taking every possible effort to make sure they get out there and have a look. I think there's at least 2 Australian P3s, 1 New Zealand P3, and a US aeroplane, plus a Herc ready to drop buoys. So certainly the Australian authorities and the Defence Force are making every effort to make sure. But I'm afraid it's probably likely that the debris is probably just debris off ships, ships that have encountered storms, containers and so on.
All right, well, I guess we will know very shortly, or hopefully, because we know that an Orion aircraft is already there. If it turns out that the debris is from the ship, what do you think that says for theories as to what may have happened to the plane?
Well, if the debris is from the aeroplane, then the mystery is still there, because the question of why someone would take the aeroplane there is the first question, and there are certainly no whys as to why you might do that. If you want to damage the aeroplane, you just do it directly rather than taking it for 8 hours flight to nowhere. The second problem is that I've had a bit of a look on the chart. It depends exactly where you are, but the ocean is at least 2.5 kilometres deep, possibly 4 kilometres deep in that area. And as we know, it took 60 years to find the Titanic, which is a lot bigger than a 777.
Yeah, certainly the Australian aircrafts out there have a big task on their hands. Jason Middleton from the University of New South Wales, thank you so much for joining us on the line. In studio, Jane Azzopardi, who's been following developments, is with me. Jane, as we know, this may not be the aircraft, but certainly it is, according to officials, the most promising lead, enough to divert all resources to that area west of Perth.
Yeah, look, I think the world has been watching this press conference. Those bureaucrats from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority were addressing the world today because everybody has been wondering what has happened to that plane for 13 days. And as you say, and as they said, this is the best lead that we have right now. And we don't even know whether these pieces of debris have come from that plane. But as you said, there is an Orion in the area that is currently looking, and there are more planes heading there on the way this afternoon. But this is just the beginning of something that is going to take days, because first of all, those aircraft have to spot these bits of debris. We know that they are large, 24 metres is what we heard in that press conference, but this is a vast area of ocean that they're looking at. And as we also heard, visibility is going to be poor. So they're going to be looking for those pieces of debris. That's the first step for the aircraft. Then they have to report back by GPS. A Hercules C-130 will come past, and it will drop buoys that will be able to give some details about how the ocean is drifting, so we can keep track of the debris in time for the Navy ship to arrive. HMAS Success is on the way, but we know that it could be several days before it even gets to the region. Once it does, it will be able to have a closer look at this debris, get it on board the ship and try and work out whether this has come from the aircraft. But then the HMAS Success has to take it all the way back to Australia so it can be assessed by experts. So this is the best lead that we have right now, but there is still a very large mystery surrounding this flight.
There is certainly, isn't there? And Andrew Nelson, we know our reporter is actually on one of those Orion aircraft, which is in the search zone. No doubt the people on board must feel really the weight of expectation, as you said, of the world, because it is the best lead. And indeed, the world has been watching for the last 13 days. There have been some leads in the past, but nothing like this.
Yeah, and it must be quite mixed feelings for the family members of those 239 people on board, because when they knew that the plane had kept flying, I suppose there's a glimmer of hope. And while there is hope, if your family member is on that plane, then you've got to cling to it. But if this is debris from the aircraft, then of course it looks as though the aircraft has pitched into the ocean, and there's not likely to be any survivors from that. So this must be, you know, just an even more tumultuous time for the relatives.
And we did see scenes last night of just how desperate for information they were becoming. As you said, nothing's going to come quickly here because it will take some time. Even though the objects have been spotted by the satellites, they've still got to be spotted by those aircraft who are in that area, but a very vast area. We know initially they were tracking 600,000 square kilometres. Obviously that's been incredibly refined now, but it's no easy task, is it?
No, it's not. The Indian Ocean is enormous. This spot where they've spotted these pieces of debris is 2,500 kilometres off the coast of Western Australia. That's impossible to imagine in your mind just how far away that is. I mean, we hear all the time that Perth is one of the most isolated major cities in the world, and it is the closest point to this debris. So, you know, all the search efforts have focused around Perth. We know members of the international media have flown into Perth in recent days, just waiting to see what is going to happen, thinking that that might be the sort of closest possible point to where this site is. Not only is it wide, but the Indian Ocean is so incredibly deep. We heard the experts in that press conference there couldn't even put a figure on it, but it is several thousand metres deep. And look, that is just an enormous area, an enormous search area for them to be looking for. And while 24 metres sounds like a huge piece of debris, it's going to look like a tiny speck when you're looking at the ocean from there. And we heard that it may not even be a piece of plane. I mean, you know, it could have been something that's fallen off a ship. So certainly a long way to go in this.
Absolutely, Jane. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. We are going to cross now to Laura Turner, who is on the ground in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. Laura, we all heard that press conference. What's the reaction been where you are?
Well, of course, the world's media is all gathered here. They're all glued to TV screens and the internet to see any news coming out of Australia from that press conference. I guess the biggest gasp was drawn when revelations that one of the satellite images was 24 metres large. I mean, there's been all sorts of talk in the last 13 days of all sorts of things being seen or found in the ocean, but when you hear that one of the images is that big and in the search area, well, it gives more gravitas, doesn't it, to what Australia may or may not have found this morning. And I guess it's a great turnaround too for Australia that they say that those images came out this morning, they were analysed, and we were told early this afternoon that that is what was going on. So all hope now from relatives and the media here. We're all clinging to the TV screens and the internet to see what is going on in Australia. We haven't seen any relatives turn up at the hotel here yet, as they did last night. I guess they're now dealing with this new information and what it means for them. But we may see them at that press conference again this afternoon. We'll certainly get answers from Malaysia too as to just what is going on with communications with Australia and this new information.
And Laura, can you tell us whether there's any understanding as to whether the Malaysians have offered to help with this new search effort?
We don't have any understanding of that as yet, I'm sorry. We only really get fresh information from the Malaysian authorities late afternoon here, which is in the evening Australia time. So we don't know what Malaysia is saying and reacting to this information as yet, but as we know, they're working together. But the other day, a couple of days ago, they did say that the countries that are involved in the two search areas are really the ones who are taking control of those areas, and Malaysia has let go a little bit and is just overseeing the whole investigation, but it really is Australia's investigation for this certain search area.
There must be a real sense of anticipation building. I know we're still some way off getting information, but it is the best possible lead we've had in some days, and surely that's being felt where you are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had a real lull for a few days. I mean, a whole week last week. There was a lull until Saturday when that dramatic information came out about the communications on board in the cockpit being turned off. Then there was a lull for a few days with not a lot of information coming through, and that really led to the relatives of the Chinese on board and their outburst last night, their frustration. So now anticipation is, of course, building once more. As you say, this is certainly the most concrete piece of information we've had in this whole time, in these 13 days. And now that we know there is a visual or a couple of visual images of this too, at least it gives these relatives and the people here something to look at, analyse and hopefully gain some answers from.
All right, Laura Turner there in Kuala Lumpur, thank you. I'm going to return to Jane Azzopardi, who's in studio with us. Jane, if people are just switching on to this breaking news about the Malaysia Airlines plane, can you bring us up to date as to what we've been told by authorities this afternoon?
Well, we've just had a press conference from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, and they have told us that a satellite has spotted some debris in the Indian Ocean just south of the search area where they've been tasked to look for flight MH370. At this stage, they don't know what that debris is, but this is the best possible lead on the search for that plane, and it is sufficient enough for them to be diverting resources that way. There is a plane in the region already. Another 3 are heading there. The planes will be tasked with, first of all, sighting this debris from the air. We know it is 24 metres big, but on a satellite image, we heard it looks just like a blob. So they will work out where it is and send a GPS signal. HMAS Success is on its way to that area. Once it knows where to go, it will look for the debris on the ocean. It will then be in a better position to work out if this debris is even associated with the plane. Then it will collect the debris and bring it back on board. We have just had a press conference from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. John Young had this to say a short time ago.
The Australian Maritime Safety Authority is coordinating the Southern Corridor search for the missing Malaysian Airlines aircraft, with assistance from the Australian Defence Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force and the United States Navy. AMSA's Rescue Coordination Centre Australia has received satellite imagery of objects possibly related to the search for the missing aircraft flight MH370.
Now, Jane, we know some assistance has been offered from around the world. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, in that press conference, we also heard that several other countries, since this information has come out, have offered to help in the search for this debris. But this is a very long way off the coast of Western Australia, 2,500 kilometres. So there's only certain aircraft that have the capability to go there and to search. So the Australian authorities at the moment are just working with some Australian aircraft and some New Zealand and US facilities. The ship, as I said, is also on its way out there. But it may be days before we know if this debris is even associated with the plane, because they have to find it, they have to analyse it, they have to bring it back to Australia. It is a huge area for those planes to search, and also the Indian Ocean is so deep, which is only going to make this search more difficult.
Certainly is a tense wait, isn't it? Jane Azzopardi, thanks for bringing us up to date. We will go to a break shortly, and afterwards we'll be joined by aviation security expert Desmond Ross for his take on this new breakthrough. You're watching 9 News now, and if you've just joined us, we have some big news on the search for the missing Malaysia Airlines flight. Here is what we know. The Prime Minister told Parliament this afternoon that 2 objects possibly related to the search of MH370 have been found in the Indian Ocean. The objects were discovered through satellite imagery by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. They're now being assessed by specialists. One RAAF P3 Orion has been dispatched to the area. Another 3 aircraft are following. The Prime Minister has described this as new and credible information in relation to the search. And of course, we are learning more about this search throughout the afternoon. But in the studio now, I do have an aviation expert, Desmond Ross. He's also a pilot, certainly someone who can shed some more light on this situation. Desmond, you were listening to the press conference. You've got the media release there in front of you. We're all, I guess, eager to know more. But from what you heard in the press conference about these 2 objects, one 24 metres in size, has it shed much more light for you on what might have happened if, in fact, it is the plane? And do you think there's a strong chance that it may be?
To be perfectly truthful, I'll be a little surprised if it does turn out to be parts of that aircraft. The position just doesn't seem right to me, but someone is seeing it. Someone believes it could be part of it. I hope it is. At least it would solve a mystery. Is it common for there to be a lot of debris in that area? After this length of time, I mean, what are we in now, 14th day? I think that most of the debris would have scattered over a very, very wide area. I mean, it may have been over a wide area. If the aircraft had broken up at high altitude, it would be spread over a very wide area by the time it hit the ground, the water, I should say. If it hit the water intact, it would still, after 14 days, be all over the place. So at this point, no, I wouldn't expect to find a lot of debris in one location. So what do you make then of the government suggesting that it's, I guess, a credible lead and the most promising lead that we've had to date? Good luck. I hope it is. I guess we all hope it is, so that at least we bring some closure to the whole thing and move forward. But let's see what comes out in the next couple of hours when the aircraft gets there and can get a closer look at it. What have been your thoughts as to how the search has been managed right from the start? Honestly, not terribly impressed. I think that it was slow starting. I think it should have gotten underway a lot earlier. I think there's been a lot of misinformation. You know, we have one report one day which is rescinded the following day, even by credible journals like the New York Times, various other people, you know, even in our own media has been misled here. And I think it's because of poor management of information. If anything comes out of this, one of the big things that needs to come out of this whole exercise, or this whole tragedy, is a very thorough look at how it has been handled, at how the information flow has been handled, at how they've treated the passengers' relatives and friends. All of this needs to be examined carefully and lessons need to be learnt from it. And that probably requires an international conference. Well, we did see that a lot of family members were getting pretty distressed last night. From your understanding, is much information being passed directly to them, or are they just picking it up from the media? What I saw last night, now I watched several of the international news channels, I got the distinct impression that they were not being given information at all, that they were probably getting little more than we do from the general media. I'm told that there are briefings being given to them in their hotel rooms, but I don't think that they're getting information that certainly that satisfies them. They're not getting information that satisfies them. Now you've said, and we of course know that this may not be part of the plane, but it is the most promising lead to date. The government acknowledges that. If in fact these objects, 124 metres in size, do prove to be from that MH370, what does that tell you about what actually may have happened if it is in that specific spot? Yeah, there we come to another conundrum. I'm personally not really convinced that the aircraft was taken deliberately to wherever it is. I'm still tending very much toward the theory that something catastrophic occurred in flight at 35,000 feet when they were flying, and I'm of the view that the aircraft became uncontrolled and wandered off in a direction which was not really programmed. They talk about how it's flown through various waypoints. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I'm not at all convinced of some of the information that's coming out as being accurate. And if it is down in this southern area, it could be because it was simply out of control, and it was maybe flying in a stable fashion, but not with a command heading and a command hand on the controls. And if that was the case, that'd obviously be a very rare incident to occur. Not really. For a large aircraft, yes, but I mean there have been several cases over the years, including not so very long ago where there was one in Greece. There was in Athens. I'm sorry, it might have been. I can't recall the name of the airline, but there was. I think it was a DC-9 that depressurized and flew on and on and on until it ran out of fuel and crashed into a mountain. Everyone was unconscious on board except for one flight attendant. A fighter aircraft came up alongside and saw a flight attendant in the cabin, but it was too late. He was unable to assist him to do anything. There was a business jet. I think it was a Learjet or a Cessna Citation some years ago, which under similar circumstances in the United States depressurized. Everyone became unconscious and the aircraft flew on and on until it ran out of fuel and crashed. It has happened before. All right, well, you spoke before about, I guess, wanting to see perhaps new guidelines as to how different searches should take place. What do you think does need to be done, and what can we learn from this as we do wait for information? Yeah, it's not so much the way in which searches are done. I think what's bothering me and bothering quite a lot of other people, I think, around the world at the moment is the way in which the Malaysian authorities and the airline itself has handled the information flow, handled the... You know, frankly, it's better to stand up and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, we don't have any information to give you at the moment. We're doing our very best and we will come back to you as soon as we can. It's much better to do that than to give a story which is not confirmed, which is not clear, and which subsequently turns out to be a false lead. Yeah, all you're doing is building expectations and
I guess that's what we're experiencing right now from the Australian authorities, in a sense.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated by this development, and I'm sure everyone around the world is waiting on it with bated breath to see if it's true. Let's hope it is true, but hey.
All right, well, Desmond Ross, I know you're going to stick around with us, pilot aviation expert. We do appreciate all of your insight, and we are going to go to a break, but we will, of course, be back with more on this update on the breaking news regarding missing Flight 370.